Hello, everybody. Welcome to Laser Brains. Joshua Merval could not be with us, but who's here in his stead?
Some person who feels uncomfortable in the center seat.
Yes. Champion, co-owner of Meteor.
That's me.
Thank you for hosting movie night every week.
Anytime. This was a fun one.
Yes, it was.
This was a fun one. Good crowd tonight, too.
What's that? Yeah, it's a very good crowd. Yeah, we want to thank everyone that came out tonight, especially because they were weathering the cold. Mm-hmm. And we especially want to thank this guy because this is your first time at movie night at Meteor.
Yeah, that's right. This is my first time ever being here for a movie night specifically, and it just so happens to be my favorite film of all time. So
what a coincidence.
It's not your first time being on the stage, though, is it?
Absolutely not.
No, this is Chase is the bass player from local darlings 2 years apart.
Nice.
And has played on this stage many, many, many times. Usually standing right around in this area, like on this side of the stage.
Perfect.
I'm sure I've left a mark on the floor somewhere.
Probably, and I've probably had to mop it up.
There you go.
So this is one of your favorite movies? Your favorite movie?
This is my favorite film ever.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have a lot to talk about. This is definitely one of my favorite sci-fi and suspense and science fiction films. But this guy, you've never seen this film.
Not until today. This is my first time seeing this.
Incredible.
And it is incredible. Having seen it, that I haven't seen it.
Right.
But it is one of those movies that sort of falls into that, like if you're not an expert in the genre, horror movie.
Right.
An early John Carpenter movie from 1982 called The Thing. Right? Like it has, like even the name The Thing, it conjures up sort of these 1960s style.
50s, yeah, literally 1950s. That's a remake, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm aware of that now.
Yeah.
But like the years of my life leading up to this, it just like it existed as an idea and not as a film. It existed as an idea of a cheesy proto horror film from the early 80s that maybe I'll get around to watching. And I had no idea that it was this. This is a serious movie.
Yes,
this is a serious movie.
Yeah, and okay, so I saw it as a kid a couple times, and I grew up loving John Carpenter's Halloween. And I always knew The Thing was as good, but it was just like his other classic film, okay? And I'd also seen Starman and whatever else. But maybe about 10 years ago, my friend Jared Ferris showed it to me again. And that's when I realized, holy shit, this movie is good. And then since then, I've watched it 2 more times, and then tonight's the 3rd time. Since realizing how good it is, and it gets better every time, and I notice new things every time. But why don't you tell us about your experience first, noticing this movie?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think I was shown this movie when I was probably about 10 years old. My dad is a big movie buff. He's always been a big movie guy. So, he
and a good parent to show this movie to a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I was about to say, like he didn't shy away from showing us movies that had a little bit more of that bite or a little bit more of that edge to it. And like looking back, sure, there's some comments that can be made about, was that the best thing to be showing me at that age? But, I'm grateful that he did. I think that it really kind of shaped my taste in movies, and not just movies, but like horror and sci-fi. There's a lot of things that The Thing does that are very like rooted in cosmic horror, right? I mean, cosmic horror kind of stems from that idea of like, you can't really describe what it is that you're seeing on screen, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I think that this movie just kind of, takes that idea and runs with it. Right. And I mean, there's so many films that I think have tried to do what The Thing has done since 1982. And I don't think any film has kind of lived up to what we just watched. So,
you're right.
Yeah. And I think I've seen this film probably about a dozen times now. And I mean, I've introduced it to my wife, and, I remember the first time we watched it together, she was like, all right, that was definitely a pretty wild ride.
So there's so many things. Oh, I mean, there's things I noticed this time around that I didn't notice before, but obviously the most obvious things about this movie are that these characters are isolated. They're in, the Arctic, so the weather is a component of the story, right? Paranoia. And also the idea that one by one, it's like, the novel 10 Little Indians, like they're whittling down the numbers as they go. It's a combination of horror and sci-fi, right? This story has been imitated, like you said, like not just the horror elements, but even just the idea of like something like Reservoir Dogs, where the paranoia of not knowing who the rat is, right? Mm-hmm. But Champion, I want to know, what did you notice? Like, what were the elements that stood out to you as, just jumping out at you as being what made it so great?
Well, right off the bat, that opening scene with the helicopter chasing the dog, it sets everything up perfectly. First of all, remarkable cinematography.
Right.
Remarkable animal handling. Like
Yes.
that dog is one of the best actors in the film. Like ridiculous.
Big
And
time.
just you have to give it to the trainer, but this dog is emoting and this dog is
It's a method actor dog.
basically. But the cinematography is great, but it also sets up this very interesting mystery. Like, who are these people and why are they shooting at this dog?
Yes.
And why does it just sort of ends there? And then they blow up and there is no information from these Norwegians, right? They can't even speak English to warn them. So this movie was set up incredibly. Now, everything else, I was very happily reminded of Alien.
Of course.
And I'm probably not the first person to notice that. And this thing does. Sorry, I'm tripping over myself because I'm so excited about this movie. This movie does some things better than Alien.
I would agree with that.
Wholeheartedly agree.
This movie handles the tension and the lack of trust between everyone. Like it ratchets up that. It's an extra dimension to Alien that I didn't know that Alien needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, okay, I'll tell you what I noticed this time around is that how many of the scenes, because the movie's very slow paced, but a lot of the scenes are very short. They give you 2 or 3 lines and that is it. They'll give you like a new piece of information and then someone will say one line. They'll be like, well, I don't know what they say, but they'll just say like one line and then it'll just fade to black.
Yeah.
And it happens over and over again. And you're sitting here watching this movie and they're doling things out so slowly. Even with the opening scene with the dog, you go, why is this helicopter chasing a dog? And it's going on. The guy gets out of the helicopter, walks past, he shoots one of them, walks past 5 guys. And you're just like, why is this guy so determined to shoot this dog? What a crazy, perfect way to set up this story, right?
And it gives this foreboding because there is such a determined, like, it looks crazy at the outset. Like, why is he chasing this dog and just trying to kill it? We have no information. But the determination is... It fills you with this dread. Like, this must be serious.
Well, and I think too, like, you're talking about the opening scene, the setup for the film, right? And I mean, something that I noticed several people in the audience were doing this time, when the soundtrack was just doing that don.
Yes.
Like people were getting into it. People were just like, all right. And I think that's something that the Thing, does incredibly well. It's just the score throughout the film.
Well, the score is masterful.
It's incredible.
Well, and it kind of gives you that like otherworldly vibe, but also kind of like very rooted in like what we're kind of conventionally used to. Like I always think about the Jaws soundtrack, right? Like the score from that, like just that kind of simple one note. It kind of creates that sense of foreboding, like you were saying.
But also that sort of bass drone that I'm sure you appreciate as a bass player.
Absolutely.
It gives you that unease.
Yep. Well, and it just immediately throws you into this kind of situation where you're just like, what would I do in a situation like that? I'm thousands of miles away from literally any sort of civilization. Like we're being thrown into this situation where, people that don't even speak our language are shooting us, throwing grenades at us. Like, what the hell? And then, it kind of, I think, is one of the best setups for a movie or sci-fi horror in general, right? And again, I think there's very few movies that can kind of live up to that type of setup and that type of delivery.
Well, it's funny because so you mentioned Alien. Now we all love Alien, and we all love Aliens. Have you seen Aliens?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
I love Aliens, but we were talking about this before we rolled. Alien is the better film.
Agreed.
And even though Aliens is great, it has those elements that all other movies, all the other traps they fall into, they show too much of the aliens.
Exactly.
There's a little bit too many quips, a little bit too much action, and not enough suspense, and not enough build up. And in this movie, they do, to me, everything right. Everything.
Yeah.
And even though I've seen the movie a bunch of times, I'm not as scared as I was the first time I saw it. But spoiler: when you get to the end of the movie and they're in that basement, and after everything that's happened, when Kurt Russell is, setting up the dynamite or whatever, and then the other guy, the roller skater guy, he goes off and he's in the foreground. So the camera's right here and he's in the foreground and then he just disappears. And Kurt Russell's like, hey, what's taking you so long? And then I think the music cue hits and you're like, oh no, what's wrong? and the thing is you don't see anything. You're scared of the unknown. You just see a big black hallway and you're like, oh fuck, what's going to happen next? It's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
They do so much with so little, which just camera work and shadows and darkness, right? It's just brilliant. Here's another one. And you can tell us more about the insider stuff, but at the beginning of the movie, when the dog is this brilliant actor dog, remember when the people are outside and it's daylight and the dog's looking through the window and it's not reacting. It's just like this. And you're thinking that dog is intelligent. That dog is thinking, it's observing, it's brilliant.
That is something that I picked up as well, right?
Yes.
Like, there's no reason other than the way this dog is acting to lead you to believe that this dog is sentient and is scanning and seeing what people are doing. But it is perfectly conveyed.
Yep.
Well, I think even like when they first introduced the dog into the kennel with the other animals, right? You know, you see the dog just kind of have this blank stare towards the wall.
It's
right? As if it like doesn't know how to act like a dog,
Yes,
right?
good point.
So, you know, you immediately just start picking up on this kind of like uncanny vibe from that dog. Like, okay, I get that this is a dog, but that's not a dog.
There's something wrong.
Exactly.
And it's weird. You mentioned like training. How do you tell a dog to act like that? Because you're right. It's like all the other dogs are kind of looking and the one dog is just like this. And it's like, well, it's not a puppet. It's a real dog. I know that. But there's something about, there's another trick apparently with the lighting. I don't know if you covered this in your behind the scenes research, but one of the things in film is they have like an eye light. Whenever you're lighting an actor, you give them an eye light. They have a little twinkle in their eye. Apparently, they purposely didn't light the eyes of the people who were meant to be the thing.
So as far as I know, that's actually been debunked.
But it's been debunked by John Carpenter. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where, like, you know, we were talking before we rolled again about, like, you know, how, you know, there are some things that the film just does so well. And I think there's also a lot of things that the film kind of fumbled with because, like, people were still figuring out, you know, a lot about cinematography, right? So, you know, those little bits about, you know, eye lights, you know, for years, people are theorizing about, like, okay, the characters that have that eye light or that don't have it, you know, that's the telltale sign. But then there's, you know, these people that come out and say, like chronologically, it doesn't make sense that, you know, some of these characters would be the thing. And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there's even an early scene where the dog is wandering around the...
That's what I was going to mention. Yes, okay.
And so it walks into a room and all you see is like the shadow of one of the other characters kind of like on the wall. And if I'm not mistaken, that person isn't actually a part of the cast.
Exactly. That's what I was going to mention. And that's to throw the audience off. So you go... Who is that? Is that Wilford Brimley? Is it? Yeah. So it's nobody.
Yeah. So that was that a mistake or was
no?
Okay.
So they intentionally did that to throw the audience members off because when you're observing it, you're like, you know, which character in the cast is that? Who has that hairdo? Who has that body shape?
And it's nobody.
It's literally just an extra.
That is interesting. And also to go back to that scene, that's another incredible example of this dog's the acting and the conveyance of intelligence, because he's very slowly walking down that hall.
Yes.
And he looks through a door into one room.
Yes.
And then stops and then walks a little bit more.
I know, right?
And then looks into the next room.
It's so
and then
weird.
slowly walks into it. Like, is this a remote control?
I know. It's totally right.
Wow.
Totally right. You know what else I love is there's at least 2 times in the movie where a bunch of characters look over and they see somebody like stumble out of a door and just run into another door, and it's so perfectly shot because you're like, which guy is that? What is he doing? Is he running from danger? Is he the thing? You know what I mean? But it is perfectly set up, perfectly staged. And the thing is John Carpenter, you know, he's had a very uneven career, and I've seen all of his movies, and some are great, some are terrible. But I can only assume at this early stage in his career, which, you know, this is around the time he did Halloween, he did Starman, he did Christine, he was on a roll here. I can only assume that, I mean, I know what you're saying, there's a lot of things that have been debunked, but things like that were intentional. Like the fact that he thought of, okay, let's have some guy that's not even on the cast. Let's put him in the room so you can't figure out who it is. Like, I think he's a genius at this point, right? Just brilliant, all the choices he's making. Yeah.
Well, and it's really, I think it's a crime, you know, that when the movie first came out, like, it was hated. Right, like you know, there were so many people who looked at this film, and you know, it shared the same opening week as E.T. You know, so I mean, when you go to the theater and you see, okay, I've got this, you know, John Carpenter sci-fi horror flick, or this Steven Spielberg, you know, like, you know, sci-fi epic about an alien that befriends a little boy. You know, I think most families and most people are going to look at those two options and say, well, let's go with the tried and true Spielberg, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, like, you can see more than one movie in a week.
Oh, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. But this movie, it didn't get the recognition that it deserved until like 20 years later.
I saw that it was savaged by critics.
Like, that's what... Yeah, we were talking about this before we rolled. It wasn't just dismissed; it was hated.
Yeah.
Instant
Which
junk is what people
doesn't
called
make
it.
sense to me at all.
Well, it makes sense a bit because the genre hadn't really been defined.
Yeah, right,
Like this
invented.
is John Carpenter creating a genre from whole cloth.
Right.
And wow, but people, I can understand people looking at it and saying, "What the fuck is this?"
You know what? Here's the thing. I was gonna say, Alien had come out a couple years before, but at least in Alien there was sort of a happy ending. This movie's ending is insane.
It's so dark.
And I love it for doing what it did, right? Just leaving it open-ended. Oh, it's
Let's
brilliant.
just wait here.
Well,
a
and the
while, see what
ambiguity,
happens.
the ambiguity throughout the film, I think, is what kind of creates that mystique, right? Where you're constantly looking at a character and you're like, there's something sus about that guy.
Yep.
And then it turns out that he's not a thing. And you're like,
Yep.
well, shit. You know, and then like that constant guessing of like, you know, who is and who isn't, you know, who can we trust? Even when they show that cutaway to McCready's torn clothing, right? You're thinking to yourself like, no way.
Yes.
McCready?
I know,
You know?
right? You're right. And you know, even though I've seen it a bunch of times, I kind of didn't notice that detail. Like I did, but it didn't click with me. But oh my God, they are taking the protagonist of the movie and making you doubt the protagonist. That's brilliant.
Yep.
And then he disappears. Like, where is he? Oh, now he's in this room and he's got the dynamite and now he takes charge. Oh, I fucking love that.
Yeah, when he breaks in through the window and they've got
Yes.
it locked out, they're like, I found this. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he's just got like, everybody back the fuck off,
Yeah.
or I'm lighting this and we're all dead.
I love it. I love it. It's just and the thing is, like you said, okay, the way that they throw you off with different characters, like the old, I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know the different characters' names, but the old man with the bushy eyebrows. He's-
Wilford
Gary.
Brimley.
No, not him.
Oh, not him?
The skinny guy.
Oh,
Gary.
Gary.
Yeah.
It's like he's kind of a dick the whole time. She's like, he's probably a thing, but he's not a thing. And then
are you talking about the guy that shot the Norwegian guy at the beginning? The guy that's
yes,
yeah.
yes.
I know you guys have been through a lot, but I really prefer not to spend the whole
Yeah.
winter tied to this fucking
Right,
couch.
exactly.
line in the movie.
And you think, he's got to be a thing. No, he's not. No.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
or right before that scene too, when he's, and this is something else that I appreciated, when he's got the hot needle and he's poking the blood, and the two people that are dead and tied up, and he pokes both of their blood and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And the dude's like, I guess that makes you a murderer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not addressed. It's
Yep.
just like,
Yep.
yeah, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
That's just how
You're
it is.
totally right. There's almost, because earlier I talked about the sparse dialogue. There's almost no exposition. There's no speeches. There's that one part where Kurt Russell, he makes that little tape. And I noticed that weird detail where he goes, he says something like, what does he say? We don't
No
know.
one
don't
trusts
trust each
anyone
other.
anymore.
And then he rewinds and
then
records,
records
over
over
it.
it, yeah.
Such a cool detail. I love that. Also, the part where, and this is not a speech, but when Wilford Brimley is like doing the little readout, the AI prediction of how long it's going to take. I mean,
cheesy.
maybe they couldn't do it back then, but who gives a shit, right? But other than that, there's like it's just these like one or two line scenes of just reacting, almost no explanation. And I fucking love that.
Well, and I've always loved, and like, I mean, watching it back, like for the 12th time now, like there's no spectacle about any of the deaths. You know what I mean? Like none
Right.
of the characters are seen as like, like going out in a blaze of glory. Like it's literally just like, okay, this character, you're kind of suspecting something, and then he's just gone. He's just dead.
That's a good
Or like
point.
when they have Fuchs, when he just kind of like wanders outside, and then they find his charred corpse, and you're like, well, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Like there's things that happen throughout the movie where you're just kind of always just like, well, when did that happen? How did that happen? And you
Yep.
never get the answer.
Yep.
So it just creates this overall sense of ambiguity where you're just like, well, we can probably figure it out if we really like analyze the film, if we watch it back, like 10, 20 times.
Sure.
And for me, that's always been the beauty of this film, is that every time that I've watched it, I always catch something new.
Yep.
Right. And even when you get to the end where right before the credits roll, you're like, is Childs, is he infected? Is McCready infected?
Right.
And there's all these theories, and like that's something that you don't see that in cinema anymore, where people are just constantly guessing about what the resolution of the film is, other than something like Inception, right?
Sure.
Like people just constantly talk about, will the top fall over? Will it stay up? Right?
Yeah.
Like in this, one of my favorite theories is that at the end, McCready has that bottle of liquor that he's carrying throughout
Yep.
most of the film, and he hands it to Childs at the end. After that line where he says, why don't we wait around, see what happens? There's a theory that like that bottle is actually full of kerosene. And so when Childs takes a swig of it and doesn't recognize that it's kerosene, McCready catches him and like haha, you're a thing.
Sure.
You know, and I mean,
Okay.
and you know, there's always those ideas that, you know, this is how the film could resolve, but the fact that there is no there's no sequel. There's nothing that kind of ties up,
right.
you know, the narrative in a nice little bow.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, all these people on like Reddit, all these people on like YouTube, like coming up with these theories, and it's still talked about to this day, right? Like, what other film do you guys know that has that kind of effect on
And I would like to say, I'd like to speak directly to Hollywood for a second. Don't take that away from us,
Yeah.
right? Give us more of that. I like open-ended
Me too.
discussions. I like not having everything spoon-fed to me.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with it. I don't want a 20, 30, 40-year-old thing sequel coming out after this.
No, we don't. And you know, we don't want to get into a Star Wars discussion. But one of the great things about the original Star Wars films were these little one-off references they made, like the Clone Wars and, you know, the backstory of this, that, and the other that we did not need explanation for.
And in fact, I think explaining those things detracts
Yes.
from the film.
Yes.
Let us use our imaginations.
Yeah.
Let us decide what the Clone Wars are.
Yes.
We don't even know.
Yeah. And even with this film, you know what? Okay, I once rated this film as a 9.9 out of 10. And if there's one, maybe two things I would change, the one thing I would definitely change, I wonder what you think of this. Opening the movie with space.
Well, it did.
Yes, but they shouldn't have.
I agree.
I see what you're saying.
Because now you know it's an alien. If they would have opened the movie with just the landscape, then the whole movie you're like, what is this thing? What's going on? And then it's more of a mystery. So that's the one. That's why you give it a 9.9 out of 10. What do you think of that?
I mean, you know, I think that it's just like, it's such a little like throwaway moment in the beginning to kind of like give you a little bit of context about like what this thing is. And I understand where you're coming from with like, you know, you're already saying like, well, this is a thing from outer space.
Yeah.
But right there, that's a callback to, you know, the film that kind of inspired this, right? It's literally a thing from outer space. And so, you know, if you've ever seen that movie or even clips of that, you can see some parallels to what John Carpenter did on screen, right? Like in that original film, I think that was one of the first fire stunts ever put on film. And then you look at this film and there's fire stunts out the wazoo.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like people are getting set on fire left, right, and center. You know, there's explosions everywhere, but it's done in such a tasteful way that, you know, I think that little bit at the beginning where they say, okay, this is an alien crash landing on planet Earth, right? Like, you know, and for what it's worth too, like, you know, they don't necessarily tell you where it's from. They just say, okay, here's this like flying saucer and it's crashing.
Sure.
They don't tell you when it happened. They don't tell you how it happened.
That's a good point, because technically that was 10,000 years
Exactly.
ago. That's a good point.
Exactly.
Okay, but Ian, what do you think of the opening shot?
I'm 100% on your camp. Sorry, Chase.
That's all right.
I don't think that we should have had any idea that this was an alien until they found out that it was an alien.
Right.
And either we could have that when they go down into the thing, like, or sorry, I needed to go and make some drinks, and I missed the part where they found where the crash site was.
Yes. So, okay, what's the chronology? First, they find that square thing. Yes. First, they're in the Norwegian bunker.
Norwegian, and they find the
that
thing.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
But then they fly out because they look at the map and they see what's the reason they fly out?
So they actually take all of the records and all of the you know, the video tapes that the Norwegians made, and then they review that back at their base and they say, well, what is this thing that they kept spending all this time at? It was like, you know, it was like a couple of clicks away from their base, blah blah blah, and then they see the footage of them with this massive, you know, crater in the ice, and they're like, well, we got to go see what the hell that is.
And that's when I think we should learn that it's an alien.
Right.
And I'm going to go back to Alien again. The scene where they're on the planet and they see the ship, right? And it's kind of like, it's creepy and it's, I like that style of that reveal, right? Them going on and seeing the alien captain dead in his chair, right? Creepy, understated, quiet. We don't need to see the thing crash at the beginning, I don't think, right? If we need to call, we do need to call back because it is part of the original that it was made from.
Well, and like that's when I was saying earlier, like, you know, the film, and I can't remember exactly when it came out. It was, I think, the early to mid 50s, but it was literally called The Thing from Outer Space, or A Thing from Outer Space.
Another world.
That's it. Sorry, yes. So, you know, like when we see that ship, you know, that flying saucer at the beginning, just kind of coming out of nowhere, burning up in the atmosphere, crashing on the planet. To me, it's just like, well, what was that? When are we going to find out what that was? right? And then when you find out that, okay, this thing's been buried in the ice for like, 10,000, 100,000 years, you're like, oh shit. You're like, okay, so that opening scene was actually like way before the events of this movie actually taking place. And I think, there's an argument that could be made that, maybe it could have been done better. Maybe it wasn't necessary. But I think, for those people who at the time might not have really been, familiar with sci-fi, seeing that kind of like connects those dots between, okay, this is literally something from outer space, right?
That's a good point too, because we have to examine this through the lens of this is 1982.
Exactly.
And we've seen a lot between then and now that sort of prepares us to deal with that ambiguity.
Well, there's something that always makes me chuckle watching this movie back, and that's when they discover that the doctor had been like in that bunker, creating this flying saucer, and it literally looks like one of those cartoon drawings of a UFO.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, man, that is so primitive of like what an alien would look like or what they would be flying, and it always makes me crack up because I'm like, is that what people thought aliens looked like or what they flew?
The last time I saw this movie, I didn't like that scene, but now that I've watched it again, I do like it. I don't mind it at all. I think it's cool that it shows that he was a thing. It's just crazy because up until the point you're not really sure, and then now you know, right? But I want to point out a scene from the original because have you seen The Thing from Another World?
So I've seen bits and pieces. I've never seen it front to back.
Okay, it's really good. Like it's on its own. It's a classic movie, but the alien itself is completely different. Not nearly. It's just a guy in a suit, right? It's not nearly as good.
50s. So
yeah.
Well, and that's actually where this kind of the background of the thing. Where
because the artist didn't know what the movie was going to be like, right?
And it was basically just like, well, here's a guy in a suit.
Yeah, yeah. It's a classic cover. But anyway, in the original movie, there's a lot more dialogue. There's a girl in it. It's a totally different style. But they do have the scene of the guy on fire, right? And there's one thing they do in the original is really cool. They actually go out and they find the flying saucer, but it's under the ice. And so they're like, hey, what's this down here? And there's like maybe 10 or 15 guys. And they're like, okay, everybody's spread out. I think I see the edge of it here. And the way that it's shot, they basically spread out and they form a circle around the shape of the UFO. And it's gigantic. And in this movie, they keep that scale. When they go to the site of it under the ice, like it's all kind of dug out, it's basically the same size as it was in the original movie. It almost makes it feel like the original movie happened. And this is just like the next group that comes across this creature. It's kind of cool. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool.
And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because the movie that came out in 2011, also called The Thing, when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, they're going to do a remake of the 1982 film. That's going to be kind of cool. And then it turns out that it's a prequel. Right. And so, if you were to watch the 2011 film front to back and then immediately start the 1982 film, it connects seamlessly. Yeah. They almost create the beginning of this perfectly in the ending of the 2011 film. And, I think that a lot of people were misled with the marketing of that. But I think if they kind of called it something different, if they labeled it as something different than The Thing, it would have been this kind of like this perfect idea of like, okay, this was the original research group. And then the 1982 film is the group that found them afterwards, right? And there's so many little details, even like with the axe in the wall. There's a scene in the 2011 film that shows how that axe wound up there. There's a scene that shows the guy cutting his wrists and like bleeding out in the chair like that. There's so many of these little like really cool attention to detail moments where you're like, oh, okay, I remember that.
Sure.
But again, if you're not a fan of the original or if you didn't know that this was a prequel, you're going to be completely sideswiped.
Right.
Yeah. Why are they calling so much attention to this axe?
Exactly.
But also, there's one key thing they did in the remake that screwed up the whole shebang, right? You know about this, right?
They released it?
Yes. No. What happened was they shot the entire remake with practical effects, and then the studio was like, fuck all that. And they covered it up with CGI.
Yeah, and they told the original VFX team, the one that did the practical effects, that they were just going to do digital enhancements. And so the team that did all of this practical effects, they spent like tons of time on animatronics, tons of time on dummies and replicas of like the actors. And then they had some like really visually amazing stuff that like I think that if it was released in that form would have been hailed as like being on par with what the John Carpenter film had. But then the digital enhancements that they brought was basically, like you said, they just went over the entire project with VFX and CGI. And then the team that did the practical effects until the premiere screening didn't know that that's what happened.
That's horrible.
So did they find out at the screening?
Pretty much, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's horrible. Now this movie, I mean, it could not have been as enjoyable and as visceral if it was CGI. Like the special effects in this movie, like when they're doing the what is that called when you revive someone?
Defibrillation.
Defibrillation. That's one of the most frightening,
I was not expecting that at all.
Right.
His arms would just go, whoa.
I know.
And now they're bitten off.
First it opens up. That's scary. Then his arms get chopped off. That's scary. And then the fucking head turns into like the spider thing.
No, that was a little silly.
Oh,
that was a little silly. Like when it was moving and crawling, I was like, okay, you might have wanted to cut that.
I love that shit, dude. I love it.
That looked a little silly to me, and there were some chuckles. There were some chuckles in the room for that. Again, I think they took it a little bit too far with some of the
maybe 1 millisecond too long of a shot.
Sometimes 1 millisecond is all it takes
know what you're saying.
to sort of pull you out of it.
Yeah.
But like the viscerally horrifying effects, those sinewy things that would shoot out and just sort of like wrap like
little licorice bits.
So this is where I was talking about this with Heather. Up until that moment, the thing looks like a mammal. It looks like a mammal. But the moment those things come out, now it looks like a parasite.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets, now it's body horror. And the fact that the one was coming out of its mouth and then pulling its body on the floor, that was fucking crazy. Mm-hmm. And then like just, the double heads and the opening up and the jaws coming out, like that was disgusting. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so this special effects team, I don't remember. Do you know who worked on it? Like, was it
Rob Bottin? I think that's how you pronounce his name. But I was talking to Ian when I first got here about some of the special effects, and like he actually was hospitalized after the movie was finished because John Carpenter saw him after the movie kind of wrapped, and he was like, "You don't look so good, man. Like, someone get this guy to a hospital." And he had basically been living throughout the entire production on the lot where the film was being shot, and he was basically spending like every day of the week at the studio working on the special effects. He was sleeping under his desk. He was like sleeping on the lot. And like I think that that level of dedication really paid off, even though it was at the detriment to him.
Yeah, sure.
Like again, like when you have that tangibility of an actor being able to actually like interact with something on screen, and it's not just a tennis ball on a stick, where that's where we are nowadays, where an actor has to kind of like imagine everything. But then, like you could see these actors like actually interacting. You could actually see in their eyes like, oh my God, this is fucking terrifying. Mm-hmm. This thing like splitting its head open and biting, one of my friends, like what the hell's going on? And, that again, that tangibility, I think, is something that's been lost in, modern cinema. And, to me, that's why I appreciate this film so much. Like, being able to see a movie that's 46 years old now and saying like that movie still holds up. The special effects still hold up. It's
we
gross.
talk about that all the time here.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. Puppets, even a half-rate puppet is going to look better than shitty CGI.
Couldn't agree more.
Anytime.
Well, and this is my thesis, is that a human can admire CGI, but a human cannot be scared by it. I don't think any person can watch, like if you're watching a horror and you see a CGI ghost, you're taken out of it. Mm-hmm. If you see a CGI monster, you're taken out of it. You can be like, oh, that looks natural, I guess. But there's a part of your brain that goes, the moment you see that CGI motion and that CGI texture and the way that you can put your hand through CGI, you're like, it's not real. Mm-hmm. But at least with this, you can see it's there, and it's got that wetness, like when they're taking the heart out and the intestines out. Oh, mm-hmm. and like I said, the moment when he's putting the defibrillator on and it opens up and you see the jaws, that's fucking scary.
Or the shot immediately after that when he's lying on the table and you're seeing him sort of, and it's flopping.
Yes, it feels real, 100%. Yep.
Well, in that scene, even where like the doctor's flailing around with his stubs, they actually had an amputee sub in for the actor,
really?
And they had like prosthetics on the end of his nubs, right?
Amazing.
And like he's flailing around, and they had like a whole like body double essentially. Mm-hmm. And again, like when you think about those kind of behind the scenes tidbits, and again like how much care went into kind of like stitching the special effects together, and making it not so obvious to the viewer. Right, like you're so caught up in the moment too of like that. Holy shit, that guy's chest just bit that guy's arms off, and then when you don't really catch like the little mistakes. You don't notice that it's a body double. You don't notice that it's some guy that's like it's just so amazing to me.
You're recoiling.
Exactly,
you're not thinking critically.
And I think, again, when you have practical effects that are done so masterfully, right, like it gives you that sense of like, well, I think I could probably see something like that in my lifetime, right? Where like,
that's a good point.
Yeah. Like you see it and you're almost like reminded of like, like the violence that maybe you've seen in your own life. And you're like, well, that's terrifying. Violence in any capacity is horrifying. And this at the time was one of the most violent films ever put to film.
Right. Or also, sometimes you'll see those reels where it's like a real parasite in a real insect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those are disgusting.
Like the one where they hold the praying mantis in the water and the worm crawls out of it.
I didn't want to think about it, but that's exactly what this captures.
Yeah.
That feeling, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's you can't escape from that because it can get to you, right? Like, ooh, I didn't want to think about it.
Mm-hmm. And it all feels so real. You're imagining these things. When you see these things shooting out of this weird alien and wrapping itself around somebody else, you can feel it around your throat.
Yeah.
Well, and 100%. Even like, I think it was really a smart idea to kind of open up like the first kind of like impactful deaths in the film being the dogs. Right. Because I mean, I think that a lot of people, they see these dogs and they're like, wow, those are some really beautiful dogs.
Yep.
And then you see them literally rip apart in like this really horrifying, disgusting way. And you're just like, okay, not even the dogs are safe. Mm-hmm. Right. Like we're killing dogs. Right.
Yeah.
And then, that's when you start to kind of recognize like this thing doesn't really have any sort of, prejudice on like what it kills, what it mimics, what it imitates. Right. And again, I think that's just really, really well done sci-fi. Right, where it's just like this being, this cosmic entity is just like it's here, and it's gonna imitate us, and it's gonna take over the world.
Okay, so I gotta say one more thing. So we talked about CGI and we talked about horror movie cliches and action movie cliches. So one of the things me and my friends talk about whenever we see a CGI character in a movie, and I noticed this in 1999. So that's 27 years ago. That's how old this cliche is. It's older than that. You have a CGI character, they're introduced, and they will always do the same thing. What will they do? They will look right at the camera, and they'll growl. Their jaw will open up into the camera. This movie does not fall into any of those traps. In fact, it kind of does a little play on that, but almost the opposite. Do you remember the one scene, you know what I'm talking about, when the guy... I don't remember what happens, but they surround him, and then
he has his hands, and
then he just makes that noise.
Yeah,
that is way scarier than if he growled or screamed or did or looked at the camera. He doesn't look at the camera. It's just like it's like a medium wide shot. He just looks at Kurt Russell.
Oh, are you talking outside?
Yes. Yeah. So they're all surrounding him.
Yeah, and he's on his knees.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is fucking
terrifying.
Scary.
That is terrifying. Well, so unsettling.
And I'm glad that you brought up that particular scene because, in my opinion, one of the scariest scenes of any film ever is the ending of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Okay.
Right when the character, the two characters are reunited. And the woman calls out to the man. I can't remember his name, but she says like, "Oh my God, it's you! Like I'm so excited to see you." And then he just points at her and he makes this noise very similar to that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, "Oh my God!"
Right.
Like that is fucking terrifying.
Right.
And then like I almost feel like that was like a callback to that film where I'm just like, again, like no one's safe. Like we might think that this person is just like injured. We might think that this person's just kind of like stumbling around in the cold, but. No, like that person's fully taken over.
Well, because they say that. They say, what's his name again, the character? The guy that's down? I don't remember. But they say, it's not him. It's not him. And it's sickening. It's almost like a vampire. It's like, yes, it looks like him, but it's not him.
Yeah.
He's been taken over.
Well, and even just the visual cue of seeing his hands being these like large, kind of like almost like tentacle or like kind of like grabbers, I guess you could call them, right? And you're just like, okay, it looks like him. Kind of acting like him. It's scared like a human would be.
Yeah.
He's got these massive things.
Yeah.
And he screams like that. You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Burn him.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
They do a great job of setting that up too, though, right? Yeah. Like it's established that it takes time for them to turn into us completely. It's a little more time and you wouldn't have been able to tell.
Okay, this reminded me of one more thing. It's so good. I love the part where they just finished taking care of business. I don't remember what they did. And McCready is kind of giving all the orders. And he's like, okay. And then after that, we're going to go up to my shack. And they're like, why? Because when I was there last night, I turned the light off. And then the camera cuts. And it just shows the light is on. Mm-hmm. They don't show anything else, right? It just cuts, and then we don't see them again for like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, and the next time we see him is when he's trying to get in. They won't let him in.
You know, fucking brilliant that is to just show, like, now the audience is scared of a fucking light. You know how brilliant that is to do that? That's ingenious, I think.
Well, I think it goes back to that point that I had said earlier, where like, you know, there's throughout the film, there's just these things that happen with no explanation, right? There's no like real, you can't really like track it to say like, okay, this character was there at this time, right? Like the characters are almost always together, right? The characters are almost always doing something together. And, you know, when these kind of events happen where, you know, you're like, okay, what happened there? Who did that? Was it the thing? Was it a person that just like, you know, fucked up?
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's never really explained. It's never really called back to. It's just like, this is the thing kind of like, you know, tampering with them, you know, like messing with their trust of each other. Like, and even finding out in the blood test scene that McCready's not a thing. You know, they just showed in the scene prior that they found his torn clothes. You're like, okay, so the McCready is a thing. And then they disprove that. And you're just like, okay, so maybe the thing's just trying to toy with everybody.
Right? Good point.
Yeah, I think too, like, you know, there's a fun little like kind of Easter egg, I guess you could say, in the rec room. There's a poster in the background for venereal disease, and it says, "You aren't labeled, chum." And it's kind of that idea that, like, you know, you never know who has it.
Sure.
Right? You never know who you can trust with that. Yeah. And I mean, you know, I guess it's like you know, back in the 80s, VD was you know, a really big, scary thing, right? So, you know, I think it's just that fun little detail that they kind of threw in the background to say, like, you know, you don't really know who to trust. You know, you don't really know who you can trust. Right?
So the moral of the thing, it turns out to be wear a condom.
Yeah, wear a condom. Be safe. Have safe sex, kids.
So okay. So one last thing. So this is your favorite, one of your favorite movies of all time.
I would say this is undeniably
number
my favorite
one.
film. Yeah.
So for those that don't know, can you give us another movie maybe that people have not heard of that you also want to recommend?
That's a really good question, actually. I mean, in terms of, you know, sci-fi horror, I think that this is like, you know, the top of the food chain. But I mean, in terms of just like, you know, good horror movies that maybe have gone underrated or underappreciated, I think The Strangers. I think it came out in like the late 2000s, like 2008. I think that's one of the best, like, kind of like, you know, like grounded horror flicks. They say at the beginning too, like, it's inspired by true events. Sure. So it kind of adds that little tidbit where you're like, maybe this did happen. Maybe this could happen to me. Right. And it's just, they do so much with like, you know, wide angle shots. And I'm a huge fan of wide angle shots in cinema. I mean, you know, I'm a big fan of Mike Flanagan. A lot of the projects that he's put out recently, like I think The Haunting of Hill House does wide angle shots masterfully. They add all these little, like, you know, details in the backgrounds. I think The Strangers does that very well, and I think it's one of the first kind of like realistic kind of like home invasion grounded films that kind of toys with that idea of, you know, sprinkling in these scares that don't actually call attention to the scares. Sure. Like there's this brilliant scene where the main character, she's standing in this living room and the masked intruder just stands behind her and just watches her. And he just kind of like slowly kind of comes into frame, and you're just like, oh my God, there he is. And she doesn't know he's there. But then the movie doesn't call attention to it. He's just there. Yeah. And then the next scene, he's gone. So I think, like, you know, when cinema or when directors, you know, when they can like actually pull that off, and like they don't have that kind of like, you have to see what the scary thing is at all times. Right. That's how you do effective horror. And we were talking before we were rolling about how, you know, oftentimes less is more. Right. And that's why I regard, you know, the original Alien as a better film than Aliens, because they don't really show the xenomorph at all throughout the film, right? Until like the very end when, you know, Sigourney Weaver's like having the showdown. But, you know, I think that most horror movies that have that kind of less is more idea, or that mentality behind how they actually film it, any of those types of films, fantastic.
There you go. I agree. I am with you 100%. Champion.
Yes, sir.
All right. So what other movie? I don't know what to ask you because you've never seen this movie.
I have never.
So where do you place it in your pantheon of great horror sci-fi films?
We have been exploring some great horror lately around here. We recently watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
We even more recently watched Black Christmas.
Yep.
Which I was ridiculously impressed with. I don't have a list of horror films because horror is something that I'm just sort of getting into myself lately. But this I can't imagine how I didn't see this until today. It is just so good. The cinematography is fantastic. The suspense is unreal. Yep. And to speak to the point that you were making, I agree that the less that you can show while still conveying what you want to convey, the better. If you leave things unexplained, that leaves it up to us to explain them in our heads. And my imagination is so much crazier than so much of what I'm seeing on the screen. If you leave it up to me, I'm going to scare myself more than you can scare me.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So set some things up. Let me run with it. Don't explain everything. And the ending of this film was just so good.
Fuck yeah.
So good. Because I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know where they are. I don't know who's a thing and who's not a thing. All I know is that there's 2 people left. They blew up their entire compound. Everyone's going to die.
Yeah. Well, just a quick little addition. If you enjoyed like the cosmic horror vibe of the thing, I would also say there was a movie that came out with Nicolas Cage recently called The Color Out of Space.
I haven't seen it yet.
Very weird movie. Very, very like niche horror sci-fi kind of movie. But it's one that I watched and I was very pleasantly surprised with it. So I mean, if you enjoy that kind of cosmic space kind of horror vibe, definitely give that a watch.
All right. Well.
Oh, and one more thing, I was getting just some. Because I'm a big Deep Space Nine fan. I was getting some Changeling vibes.
Of course. I was talking about that with Heather and a friend. We were talking about the trope of the Changeling, because the Changeling, I guess, is a Dungeons and Dragons thing too.
Okay.
And then you have Mystique and X-Men. Then you have, I'm sure every, fantasy sci-fi show has one thing like that, but it's a great way to create paranoia.
And I liked the Petri dishes with the blood.
Yes.
Also,
yes.
Deep Space Nine invoked that.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
How do we know who's a changeling? Well, let's take some blood and see.
Yep. It's just there's so many things that are done right. We haven't even mentioned Kurt Russell. What a brilliant performance.
We haven't mentioned any of the actors.
No.
All-star cast.
And what's the other? What's the actor's name? Toby Keith?
No,
Toby Keith. Not Toby Keith.
Oh my God, Keith Richards.
No, not Keith Richards. Not the guitarist from the Rolling Stones.
Huey Lewis.
Huey Lewis in the news. No, what's his name? We don't know. We should know that. We don't.
I said it earlier.
We don't do this research on this show.
Where's Josh with his phone?
Yeah, I know, right? But he was awesome.
Yes.
Like he was perfect.
I don't know why I'm blanking on his name
his
all of a
voice,
sudden.
his face, he was just perfect for that role. Wilford Brimley, who's a year younger than me in this. Did you know that?
Are you fucking serious?
Yes. He was born looking like an old man.
Jesus Christ.
Do you know, are you familiar with, what was the commercial, was it Oats?
Quaker Oats.
Quaker Oats. Are you familiar with this?
It's the right thing to do.
I don't think so.
So we grew up in the 80s, and Wilford Brimley, the old guy, was the mascot for Quaker Oats, and he had a mustache and a beard, right?
Yeah.
And he was like the grandfatherly.
Now that you're mentioning it, I think I see that.
Just
He
go
just
on
wanted
YouTube.
to have part of a complete breakfast.
That's
and like
hilarious.
he was that guy, but in this movie, he was the actor's 48.
It's insane.
But things were different back then.
That's
I don't know
insane.
what happened, but anyway. But yeah, Kurt Russell, he was just like I don't know if you know this. He in the 70s was a child actor for Disney films.
Okay.
And then John Carpenter, I think he cast him in the Elvis TV movie, which is great. And then he did, I think, Escape from New York was before this, I think, right?
I think so, yeah.
And that was his first like serious action role, which we have to screen here. We have to screen here. But anyway, he was brilliant in this, right? Like, what a great actor. The beard and everything, just like so good.
And then just 2/3 of the way through, it's like something flipped in his brain, and he's just like, I don't give a fuck about anything anymore.
Yeah.
If I have to kill some innocent people to find out who the thing is, I'm going to do it.
Even when remember the opening of the movie when he dumps the water into the computer? Yeah. That like kind of foreshadows this guy doesn't take shit from anyone, right?
Cheating bitch.
Yeah. Fuck. I could watch this movie again. Anyway, okay, so we want to thank you for joining us. Yeah, thanks
pleasure.
anytime.
Thank you, Chase.
Hopefully
Yes,
you can come out
absolutely.
another, maybe we'll show something else you like. We're showing Money Pit. We're showing Return of the Jedi. These are not...
Oh, Star Wars is one of my all-time
Okay, well
favorites.
then maybe
there
we'll
we
see you for Return of the Jedi.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so we want to thank Chase for coming out. What's the name of your band again?
2 years apart.
2 years apart. When's
Yeah,
the
you
next
got
time
some
you're
shows
playing?
coming up, don't you?
We've got a couple things kind of happening. I know that we're playing at the University of Windsor for their Relay for Life. We got a time slot for that. I know that Fog Lounge is trying to have us out sometime soon. I'm
Nice.
sure we'll be here sooner rather than later. Ian's always hooking us up with gigs.
Nice.
And so, I mean, like, honestly, just a quick shout out to Meteor. Best venue in Windsor.
Oh,
Yep.
shucks.
I'll put that on tape.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
All
Absolutely.
right. And speaking of Meteor, I want to thank this guy for hosting Movie Night at Meteor every Wednesday.
For a film like this, you don't have to thank me. It's just
right.
wow. So good. So good.
Yeah. This is what it's for. It's like sometimes I feel bad because we show older movies, and because our crowd is a little bit younger than me and Ian. But you know, a night like this, I'm glad because it seems like everyone liked it, right? We had a big crowd.
We had
tonight.
25 people out for this, and as soon as the film started, you could hear a pin drop in this room.
Yep,
it was
totally
everyone was
right.
completely locked in.
Totally right.
And then as soon as it was done, everyone just gets up and starts talking about it.
Yep,
which is great to
100%.
see.
Yep. There you go. Okay, more to come. Come every Wednesday to Meteor. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube and comicbooksyndicate.com. Until the next time, see you later.